They may claim out of expediency that they are at war with the United States or the West, but the fact is they terrorize their neighbors and offer them nothing but an endless slavery to their empty vision and the collapse of any definition of civilized behavior. And people like this ultimately fail. They fail because the future is won by those who build and not destroy, and the world is shaped by people like Jim Foley and the overwhelming majority of humanity who are appalled by those who killed him.
The beheading of an American journalist has been reported as a revenge killing for American airstrikes against the cowards calling themselves ISIS. And there are those who will, no doubt, fall for the definition. But what we are seeing here is so much more, not about mere revenge, but perhaps part of a calculated effort to draw America back into what every terrorist knows we do not want, another war. So the question is, what should our response be? Welcome to MidPoint, the assistant editor of Blue Force Tracker, former intelligence chief and infantry squad leader in the U.S. Marine Corps, James LaPorta, and former staff sergeant for the 82nd Airborne Division, now state director for the Minnesota Concerned Veterans for America, Jason Quick. Gentlemen, we thank you both for joining us here today. Jason, I'm going to go ahead and begin with you. As we look at what is happening here right now, and I just mentioned this because these are smart terrorists. As some people have said, these aren't a bunch of guys out wearing pajamas somewhere in the middle of the desert. They know what they're doing here. The beheading of an American journalist, revenge, or is this indeed something about knowing full well America disdains going to war right now and they're just trying to suck us in?
I think what's important to focus on with the current situation with ISIS, the beheadings like you mentioned, some of the other activities that they're involved in, is that we cannot allow a threat of this nature to continue to grow and fester in the Middle East. This is something that the administration needs to respond to, and we need to continue airstrikes and current operations in that area.
How do you do it, though, without getting pulled in hook, line, and sinker?
I think the best response to that is to act right now. Before this threat is allowed to continue to grow, like I mentioned, ISIS can be defeated and destroyed right now with the appropriate action. I think getting drawn into a longer conflict would involve us not taking action right now and allowing the threat to grow.
James, I'll go ahead and ask you the same thing then. Are they just using this to suck us in because they know that we don't have the stomach, or at least some members of our government and other people who live here, some citizens, just don't have the stomach for this again?
I think ISIS made a critical mistake when they beheaded James Foley. They awoke the sleeping giant. But the problem is right now is, as a government, we need to get on the same page in regards to what's going on. You have Mike Rogers, who sits as the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, saying ISIS is an immediate threat right now. But then you have Chairman General Dempsey, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, saying, well, they're a threat, but they're not a threat to the United States right now. Right now, before we start conducting airstrikes in Syria, we need to get on the same page intelligently as a government.
Okay, now let's take the next step. Why can't we get on the same page as a government? What's stopping us?
That is a failure of leadership, and that goes all the way to the top. The Obama administration is not, we're reading the wrong different music. The Defense Department is saying one thing, the Intelligence Committee is saying another thing, and the leadership at the top, the Obama administration specifically, is not getting everybody on the same sheet of music. It falls on the leadership in the White House.
All right, then let's look at that then, because I want to talk about leadership here with Jason, knowing full well that you've been involved. You know exactly what leadership is at this point. What is it? Let's just say that we need to take one step. We've taken the step of airstrikes right now. But what is next? What more can we do when this nation is simply war-weary? What makes sense?
What makes sense is a calculated effort between the administration and all the branches of the military. Like your other guest just mentioned, we need to get on the same page, agree what the threat is, and then come up with a calculated plan to destroy that threat. If the threat is allowed to grow and fester like it is right now, then it only becomes a greater threat to the United States of America in the future. We cannot allow that to happen.
Don't we, though, need help from the people there on the ground, the people who actually are the citizens of the various countries to help us? Because, frankly, when you look at it, there are those people who would say we cannot get this done by ourselves. And no matter how many times we try to say, let's drop 1,000 bombs, or as some people say, kill them all, let God sort them out, sooner or later you're going to have help from the ground, or else we will fail?
Of course. Liaising with the ground forces there, putting those forces back together into a manner where they can combat this threat along with us and eventually, hopefully on their own, would be a desirable end state. Yes, we need the involvement of the local people in that region in order for the entire mission to be successful.
Desirable indeed, but do you get the feeling that they're willing?
I think there are people in Iraq and the neighboring countries that are willing to work with us and willing to help our military. When I was there in 2010, that's exactly what those people did. They worked with us, they worked with each other to bring safety and maintain safety around the areas where they live.
James, when you talk about waking the sleeping giant, a lot of people will agree with you on that. But why should ISIS, the people involved there, respect American authority and respect American military authority when they have now seen 10, 12, 15 years of Middle Eastern involvement by the United States that has not gotten the job done, that quite frankly, when America's done, troops are leaving, everything goes back to how it was before?
Look, it's obvious at this point that we should have left a residual force in Iraq. That's obvious. But we have a fiduciary responsibility to finish ISIS. I will go a step forward, and Jason said this correctly. We need to get involved on the ground. And I'm not talking about troops on the ground. I'm not talking about a massive footprint in Iraq. I'm talking about using our special operations forces, our Delta teams, our SEAL teams, to be the scalpel. We need to send in the scalpel to cut the right artery and the right veins within ISIS. As far as targeted airstrikes, we need to start targeting key leadership within ISIS to start taking these guys out.
Well, that's all fine and well. I mean, we all understand that, and I think we're all in agreement on some of these points that you made. But again, the question, why should they respect us when we go in, go to war, do something, leave, and everything goes right back to the same way it was before? Why should they respect American power?
They're not going to respect us right now, Ed, if we don't do anything. And right now, yes, we realize the mistake that we made. We should have left a residual force. But however, if we're not going to do anything at this point, we're not going to gain any credibility back from the Iraqi people.
Then what does it take? I mean, if we're really talking about it here, let's get serious. Actual force. What's it going to take? James, I'd throw this to you first. And we've already started with airstrikes. So what do we have to do right now that would get the respect back of our enemies?
Right now, we need to insert our special operations forces into the ground and start gaining critical infrastructure back within northern Iraq. Our air policy should be we start targeting key leadership within ISIS, and I'm talking about in Syria. Now, we don't have the choice. We have to kind of work with Assad in regards to targeted strikes in Syria. But that's what we need to do. We need to send in our special operations, and we need to start targeting key leadership within ISIS.
Jason, I hate to put it to you this way, and as a veteran, I know that a lot of veterans hate to hear this, but is the simple answer that we have to go in and start killing people?
I think so. I would echo the other comments that there has to be an insertion of special operations teams, special operations personnel to start gaining that key infrastructure. And it goes back to what I was saying before. This has to be calculated. We can't just put guys and gals on planes, send them to a country to start fighting another war. This has to be something that the administration looks at carefully, puts the right people in the right places. And if it comes to violence, then that's what needs to happen.
If it comes to violence, and don't go in looking for information, don't go in just looking to reconnoiter, but go in and start killing people?
I think our special operations teams can make that decision when they get on the ground. If the mission dictates that they need to gather information, that they need to gather intelligence without doing violence, then that might be what's most important at the time. I don't want to put an endorsement on just going into a country and doing violence without any kind of calculation.
Well, let me ask this then. James, I'll give you the last word on this, 30 seconds. Do we need to go in and show some violence? Again, I'm not advocating that, but I'm saying there's a lot of people who will say that is the only thing that ISIS and people like that understand is the power of the gun.
Right now, there's an intelligence gap, and the intelligence gap is in with human intelligence. Intelligence drives operations. We need guys on the ground, special operators who know which where to point the where to put their weapons on and fire the key round.
But not start killing.
They need to start killing, but key personnel.
Okay, that'll answer the question for the moment. Gentlemen, I appreciate your very frank comments to some very frank questions. I hope next time we meet it'll be under better circumstances. James LaPorta, Jason Quick, thank you so much for joining us, both of you.
Thanks,
Thank
Ed.
you.
All right, later on this hour, while they may be immediately discounted by some, perhaps we need to take a second look at certain conspiracy theories and give them a fresh airing. But that could be just a conspiracy to make us believe. And after the break, tasers and naked people. Indeed, another trip to Outland.